Okay, I think we'll make a nice start. If that's okay. Anyone else can join us, that's fine. Thank you so much for coming, everybody. Welcome to lots of lovely new faces and some old friends. So really thank you for coming. I hope you're having a gorgeous time. I'm really loving this hut. And what I thought we'd do, because before we start the workshop in proper, which is about fairy queens, fairy kings and fairy guides, is just do a little bit of creating the sacred space for us to be in. So if we could all just close our eyes for a second, just to reset the space. Start taking some deep breaths. And visualize in our mind's eye a circle of light filling the room. The circle begins at the center of this room, like a golden, silver ball of light. And it grows in energy, and it slowly expands until it fills the whole room. This gold and silver sparkling band of light connects us all together and connects us to this sacred land. In this space, we honour the elements of earth with the gnomes and the tree spirits. We honour the spirits of air with the sylphs and the fairies. We honour the spirits of water with the mermaids, undines and nymphs. And we honour the spirits of fire with the salamanders and the fire sprites. We honour the ancestors who have come before us, who have taught us these ways and have kept the spaces sacred. And each one of us here invites their own guides and guardians with them. Visualise your own guide or guardian, animal, fairy or goddess, coming towards you and sharing this circle with us. And take a few deep breaths. And whenever you're ready, open your eyes. Cool, thank you. Okay. So I know that everybody here has different experiences of fairies and experience with fairy queens, elementals, but I'm going to go through a little bit of a basic run as well, because I know that some people haven't really explored much into this before, but we'll save some space later in the day to share our stories if you have any stories or experiences you would like to share. In this workshop I'm going to be looking at what is a fairy, what fairy queens and fairy kings do, why we'd want to work with them, and then we're going to go into meditation to meet a fairy queen or a fairy king for us. And then later on we're going to do a shamanic journey to visit the land of fairy and to bring back our guides, our own personal fairy spirit guides with us, if that's okay with everybody. And you'll be haunted by my drumming forever. Oh dear. Right, first of all, I'm not telling anyone what a fairy is. Everyone's going to have their own opinion, and because if I say a fairy exactly like this, they'll just prove me wrong and appear in a form just to go, ha ha, we are like this. You can't exactly say what a fairy is, but what a fairy is, is, in my opinion, the spirits of the land. There's three kind of schools of knowledge or ideas about this. They're either thought of as fallen angels, which although sounds horrific, there's probably some level of corrupted truth in that. You know, there's some level of they were probably the gods and the spirits that were classed into that, and this happens all over the world. There's links to fairies stories here, as there are all over the world, there's similar stories. The other idea is that they are spirits of the nature, spirits of the earth, which I feel they very much are. And the other idea is they're diminished goddesses and gods that have been banished to the hollow hills or banished to the places where they can't be seen. I don't know what you feel, come in, enjoy it. But I feel there's truth in all of that, but I think there's truth in all of those stories. And come in, hello. Yeah, I think there's truth in all those stories and more and less and beyond, within and without, because every time you try to explain what a fairy is, as I say, I would never want to kind of put them in a box. So working with fairy queens and fairy kings. Now, the name fairy queens and fairy kings, in my opinion of working with fairy, my ideas, there's kind of, I don't want to say hierarchy, I hate the word hierarchy. It makes me feel like we're in the Victorian times. So I like to say it's like a Russian doll. Instead of like, you're better, you're worse, you kind of have the big mama Russian doll, and then it goes in, and you get the smaller Russian doll in the middle. So you'd have, for example, the fairy queens, the fairy kings, which are the she of the Irish tales. They're tall, they're powerful, they're shining ones. Or you also get the goddesses and the gods. So I'd say when you see those characters in your meditations, they're very tall. They're tall as you or taller than you. They're shining and they're powerful. They can be quite easily offended. I don't know if you had any experiences with them, and the legends of fairies being easily offended is quite true. But they're noble, the noble types. The fact that they were called kings and queens, ladies and lords, is maybe because of the time when it was written. Maybe that's how they explained it to us, because it mirrored our society of the time. You have the trooping fairies, the noble fairies, who are warriors, who are mighty warriors, kings and queens, ladies and lords. And when you visit their worlds in the myths, like the Scottish myths, Welsh myths and Irish myths, you are in places of great beauty with beautiful food, beautiful music to be completely enchanted. And they're they're the noble, the leading races. Then maybe we'll put that as one of the bigger fairy Russian dolls. And then take the next Russian doll, you've got the spirits of the land, you've got the dryads, the tree spirits, you've got the spirits in the forest, the spirits of the water, of the wells, the nymphs. And then you've got the smaller Russian doll, where you've got the spirits of the flowers, the spirits, the more that we kind of get towards the fairies that you think of, that you see in art and in tales, the winged creatures, the flower fairies, the sprites, the pixies, the animal spirits. And then maybe in one of the, I don't want to say the smallest, but the next level is the elementals, the raw spirits. And I think like salamanders, fire spirits, water spirits, air spirits. And I think that when you're kind of dealing with the goddesses and the gods and the she, you can get more communication that we understand. And then we get more and more wilder spirits that we're not going to be quite so understanding of. So it's also my experience that in fairy, not everything is up for your highest good. Not everything is fluff and light. It would be like going to a foreign country that you've never been to before, with no knowledge of the language, going into a market where it's all bustling and crazy, and just talking to someone and hoping they're not going to rip you off, take your money and laugh at you. It might not happen. You could go to a foreign country, go into a market and meet someone amazing, but it's probably likely that if you keep doing that, you're going to meet at some point some trickster that's going to rip you off. So it's important to go into fairy with a fairy guide, like a fairy queen or a fairy king, who is going to show you where to go, show you the journey, show you the ways not to go. There's the Seelie court, which is what I mentioned, the trooping fairies, the higher, I don't say higher, but the beings that we're going to understand more, and the unseelie court, which are the wilder spirits, the ones that maybe aren't up for our highest good. They just don't want to know us maybe sometimes as well. They might pinch you, pull your hair, run off, but some of them might just not want to know us at all. Maybe because we've ruined the planet quite a bit and they just don't want anything to do with us. I was reading our good friend Emily Carding's book, Fairy Craft, that she puts it really well. That like in Hellboy 2, if you've seen Hellboy 2, the elves and the spirits, the naughty ones, they think the best good is that people aren't here anymore, that we've ruined the planet and we should be gone. And not that it might be that extreme, but there could be that opinions with some of the unseelie race, some of the fairy race. But with a pure heart and with good intention, you're only going to meet the ones really that are and with a good guide that are going to be helping you. If you go in there with a selfish or a mean or negative intent, then yeah, you're going to probably get a lot of trouble going in there. But going into Faerie and exploring the other world with a true heart and a love of nature and a love of life, and with the help of your own guides, then you'll have the most enriching and lovely and powerful experiences. Another thing I want to talk about before we go any further is fairy etiquette as well. What are the things of fairy etiquette that you guys have heard? Not Rob. No, Rob, you can say. No, I'm joking, you can say.
Something about they don't like to be told nice things or something, say nice things to them.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, that's the one.
What I think about that is that's a really interesting one because it's a natural human impulse. Thank you. We really, and everyone's got different opinions. So I'm not saying I'm right, and I think everyone will find. And I didn't mean it, Rob.
It's not a natural human impulse because most of together is never the same place also.
I suppose that's true.
From modern society.
It's a modern thing. But it's natural for us to kind of go, thank you. I think it's something that we've kind of, but I think as well, because we as a modern society, we say thank you without doing anything else. We think that thank you is enough. I think that fairy society is more like you will show your thanks, you will do something, like if I do this for you, you will give this offering to me. And we just go, thanks, bye, I'm off now. Yeah, exactly, because it's become a little bit of an empty gesture. We just say thank you and we think that's... So I think for us, I say thank you and I go, oops, sorry, should I say sorry either? And I end up going on this whole apology English babbling. Ooh. So I just say thank you. I do say thank you because I can't help it sometimes. I'm so blooming English. But what I do is I make sure that I will do something as well to offer that thanks. That I will say thank you and then I will make an offering and hopefully they'll understand. Some of them don't. You get a real feeling, just leave it. But I think it's everyone's exploration. And you're right, Rob, it's something very modern, isn't it, really, that we're very full of our manners probably the last few hundred years. And our ancestors for the last few hundred years haven't had much to do with fairies. So us being like this is a whole, maybe for them, a bit of a learning curve as well. I mean, I think that our fairy have always been with us, the fae have always been with us, and we've maybe betrayed them a little bit, to say the least, but not us personally, we're here to reconnect. But I think our ancestors had a very strong bond with the fairy race. And I say fairy in an umbrella, massive term. I was saying that to say all creatures are called fairies in the other world is like an alien coming to Earth and seeing an elephant and going back and saying, elephants! Everyone, elephants! It's an umbrella term. It's maybe one name for an absolutely massive amount of beings and creatures. That's lack of thought then. What was I saying? Oh yeah. Etiquette. Thank you, Michael. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah. So. Yeah, etiquette. Oh yeah. Other etiquette that you've heard? Any? I was only joking, Rob. I was only joking.
Don't eat their food or drink.
Yeah. And what do you think of that one?
If you're a fairy, if you're a fairy, so if you're a human.
Yeah. I think it's a good advice not to eat their food or drink their wine. I think it will take if you really get to know the fairies and you spend a lot of time with certain creatures or certain characters, and you'll know deep down if it's all right. You'll know if it's the right thing to do. I don't think it's a strict rule that you shouldn't, but I feel that you should spend a little bit of time, quite a lot of time, maybe many years, working with particular energies, particular fairies before broaching that one. I don't think it's a hard no, but I feel like it's good advice, especially just going in there and going, hi, just come to it, and then you might go, why do they say you don't come back, do you? Apparently, if you eat their food. But I think it's a good idea to really work on the getting to know the fairies before you eat their food. No, go. Don't say sorry.
Fairy etiquette something that is pretty much the same throughout the world, would you say, with different types of fairies that would be, say you've got a South African fairy, you've got an Australian fairy, and one likes to...
Yeah, good question.
Thank you, and the other one's like, no, but I mean...
Yeah, no, really good question. I think everyone, yeah, absolutely. I think like cultures are different. I think that also, like in Norway, when I was in Norway, you don't say thank you, but you've got to say goodbye, that kind of thing in the shop. Saying thank you was a bit weird. They were looking at me like, why are you saying thank you? But you say goodbye. It's like, okay, I've got to say goodbye to the shop person. Okay, weird. But it's just, I think it's different. I think as long as you're respectful and polite and you pay attention, I think it's the respect and being authentic and being there with genuine intent rather than the words. And I feel like it's always good to be open, and that's where with almost wherever you go, when we're sort of developing our relationship with our fairy guides and our fairy queens that we're doing today, just to ask, is this the right thing to do here, you know, when you're travelling? Because, yeah, absolutely, there'll be slightly different etiquette, but I think the genuine thing that goes through the whole world is to be authentic in your desire to meet them, and to be really respectful of whatever they're doing. You know, everyone you meet and every place you go to has a different energy, doesn't it? You don't know whether you should be doing the right thing in someone's house, or do I make tea, do I put the tea bag in, do I leave it out? You know, everyone's got a different thing. So I always bring it back to tea. I don't know why. I always bring it back to a nice cup of tea. I'm so English. So yeah, I think I think as long as you're going openly and respectfully, then you're going to be okay. And I think that's it. They're easily offended, so just don't presume until you find out. However, this is kind of what we're looking at today, is working with the fairy queens and the fairy kings. I don't want to leave the guys out. I wanted the fairy kings as well. And they're going to be a bit more, I don't know if patience is the right word, but a bit more worldly and knowing and understanding you, because they're here to be able to empower, guide and show you and teach you. A lot of the fairy queens that we'll talk about, I don't want to do too much, I want to kind of do it and getting involved, but a lot of the fairy queens we'll be talking about are from warrior races. They're from, you know, they're magicians, they're from the tales of ancient Ireland, where the culture was very, very different, but they've been diminished into kind of tiny comic book creatures. And I think it's really important that when we approach the fairy queens, we approach them like we approach goddesses, like we approach gods, like we approach any higher being. And it's important to always research any fairy queen that might come into your life and to see why. You've got Morgan Le Fay, who I'd like you to suggest some that you know as well, but there's Morgan Le Fay, I'm sure you've obviously all heard of, the fairy queen of Avalon, but she also has links to Breton. She also has links to the warrior queen goddess, the Morrigan. So there's so many, because when the Arthurian myths were written and rewritten, she was kind of brought in. But she permeates so many different myths from France, Cornwall, and particularly I feel she's quite linked to the Morrigan, the warrior goddess in Ireland, who I work a lot with. So you've got all these, you know, it's not just a fairy queen that's going to be fluttering past you. This isn't a really empowered goddess who's going to help you claim your own sovereignty, who's going to help you claim your own power and help you work in a way that's good for you. So you may find that your fairy queen or fairy king is like a snow queen, depending on what kind of energy you've got and what you resonate with. Do you resonate with the snowy, Narnia-esque, maybe your family's from a country that's had a lot of, you know, the snowy countries, Russia or Norway, and you really resonate with the Snow Queen energy. What I would also say is that when you see the fairy tales of the fairy queens, they've been so taken the mick out of. If you the Snow Queen, you know, particularly, she steals children and she takes them and she gives them Turkish delight and she, you know, freezes them and is mean. Well, in all the myths and stories that I've read, actually, if the children were good and the children were polite and they worked hard, she would treat them. She would look after them and bring them back with gifts of gold. Frau Holle was one of the goddesses in Germany that's become a snow queen, and she would go around shaking her blankets with snow and, you know, looking after the children. She was called the good mother. So back to the good people, the good folk that the fairies are called. So unfortunately, when you read the fairy tales, you'll see all these almost flimsy women, really, and it's because when Christianity came in, they couldn't get rid of these women. They were just too powerful. They couldn't turn them into saints because, yeah, she's a battle queen, and, you know, she's too powerful in this way. You know, she really likes sex. We can't make them into saints. So we can't exactly get rid of their worship. What we can do is we can diminish them. We can take the mick, because the one thing to devaluate something is to take the mick out of it and to make it sound funny. Like you say, I like fairies, and everyone points and laughs. But actually, the fairies, obviously, it's a very powerful energy, and the one way to make it less is to point your finger and laugh at it. I was reading this thing about, I won't go into this, but feminism, and I was reading this thing about when the women were trying to get the vote, and how there's always propaganda of, ha ha, women, they can't do voting, ha ha ha. And it's like, it's one way to make everyone devaluate something, just, you know, make it funny, so everyone's embarrassed and ashamed. So all these people, all these creatures that were fairies and goddesses and gods, they've survived they've stayed in our myths, they've stayed in our mind, they've stayed in our legends. But I think read between the lines, read what you're not being told. These goddesses who were spurned lovers, probably not. They probably were just very sexual beings that enjoyed male company, wouldn't want to get married, and therefore they became they're kind of these harpies, these lianshis who would take the spirit of the man. When the Lianshi fairy would find an artist or a writer or a talented man, and she would inspire him and suckle his energy until he died. But that's another case of someone who's in Faerie, that the energy of someone who spends a lot of time in Faerie, they do disconnect from this world a little bit. So maybe they didn't die, maybe they stepped away from this world a little bit. I do rant, I'm so sorry. Do interrupt.
To me, like what Hollywood did to witches, all of a sudden, I
Yeah.
just spent some time with some kids, and they had to draw the witches from that bed. Green, warty, ugly.
Exactly. You can't kill it. It still survives, but you just make it so humiliating, and everything that was beautiful and good, you make it, So whatever fairy queen you're going to be looking at, Morgan Le Fay, a deep, powerful spirit of the water, of Avalon, of the earth. You've got, come sit down, do if you can. Is there any other fairy queens that anyone feels that they have resonated with before I kind of list any? That they, Queen Mab. You see, that's an interesting one, isn't it?
I haven't ever worked with her, but I've read it.
Yeah, because I was like looking at the historical, the myth. She comes from Queen Maeve, the Queen Meb, the Irish. She was quite a feisty warrior goddess. So you can get Queen Mab and you see little Shakespeare says she was as big as a little thing, and she climbed up your nose. Like, oh God. But yeah, I mean. Again, I won't say anything that they're not, because fairies can appear this big or that big, but yeah, to respect the history of where these amazing goddess energies come from. You've got in Ireland, you've got Anya, who's a... Oh, sorry!
People pronounce it differently.
Yes,
Don't they?
and I knew someone who's got that as a name, so I was going Amy, and they were like,
Yeah,
no, that's really...
that out.
Yeah, Anya, that's it, Anya. The fairy Queen of Munster, who is a goddess and the goddess of the summer solstice and the sun, and she's at the celebration about Anya at midsummer, where you light the fires and you would walk the cattle through to bless them. And so she's represented as a goddess. Again, they couldn't get rid of her. There's hills, I think, in Munster called the Paps of Anya. So there's have you? Ah, yes, that's it. That's where it is, isn't it?
It's like Loch Gur.
Yeah. Is it still a powerful place?
Yeah.
Is it in your book?
That's my book doesn't cover Ireland.
Oh, next book. So yeah, there's all these goddesses that have turned into fairy queens, but that's fine, as long as they obviously had a fairy link anyway. That's okay. Like you read the Tales of the Morrigan, she works. In the Irish myths that she's linked to fairy, so it's not like she's been these goddesses have been made smaller into fairy queens. It's an aspect of them that they managed to retain through our folklore, because you couldn't kill fairy tales. So it's not saying that they weren't fairy queens, but they were so much more as well. The Greek goddess Hecate is even listed in the English dictionary as being a fairy queen. It was something that I would have not particularly have seen her as. And the same with the fairy kings, Gwyn ap Nuith, the Welsh, who's a very powerful Welsh god, and there was so much myth and folklore on the land as well around the Beltane line, which is the St Michael's line, isn't it? That goes from Cornwall to Norfolk, and there's so many places that would have been sacred to Gwyn ap Nuith on that line, and so we see him as a fairy king, but actually he's a very big, good, massive, powerful gods that link to the Milky Way, link to the stars, link to the earth. So when we're talking to our fairy queens and fairy kings, we are doing so much more than that. We are connecting with it's to restore fairy to what it was, really, to restore it to the power that permeates everything, the sun, the moon, the stars, the earth. And as much as Disney and the fairy tales of the last few years have kind of made them small and fluffy, at least they've kept the tales going. At least the tales have kept going through them. And as I said, we worked with fairy very strongly, and then the Christians came and it kind of entwined. We got Celtic Christianity and Celtic fairy myth, so it entwined, it stayed. And then with the Industrial Revolution, I think a lot of the fairies got mightily pissed off with us, they got increasingly pissed off with us over the last 1,000 years. And most of them, have kind of gone from our sight, gone from our world, because there's very few wild places left. But our connection still remains strong, and they call out to us. We're all here, you know, we all come to these events, we all come searching for the spirit of fairy, the spirit of nature. So the ones that believe in us still, because it's about them believing in us rather than us believing in them, they still call to us and they still want to connect with us. And that's really, really beautiful and powerful. I was going to say something else. My train of thought is terrible today. But any other fairy queens anyone wanted to mention? Yeah, Caradwyn? Yep, the powerful Welsh goddess. Yeah. Is that one that you feel you resonate with?
I just called to Wales.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Yeah, there's ones like Titania, who was in Shakespeare kind of created. She wasn't really a fairy queen before. She was one of the daughter of the Titans, and I think there's a moon, Uranus's moon, called Titania. So there's a definitely, you may see, because there's been for the last 500 years a character called Titania, you may find an amalgamation of these energies comes to you in your meditations. So yes, the fairy king's going up beneath. You've got Oberon, who's a fairy king. There's also many of the gods of the land that you'll see, or fairy spirits that you'll see. As anyone else any fairy king knowledge, or any fairy kings that they've met? No? Cool. Well, there's the Dagda as well, who's the Irish counterpart to the Morrigan, who's seen the good god, who's called the good god, and the fairy folk were called the good people, the good folk. So there's probably links there. But basically, you can't really separate it from I think actually Gordon, he had a very good idea on the train today. He was saying that, like with the Russian doll effect with the fairies, there'll be spirits of the planet, there'll be spirits of the ocean, there'll be spirits of the forest, spirits of the trees, from the biggest to the little. And you said as well, there's the solar system. You say it, you're better than me. You say what you're going to say.
Mentioning how it's kind of like how you have the universe, then the galaxies, then the solar system, the planets, then the things within the planet. Not one of them is more important than the other because they all exist in harmony.
Yes, that's it. That's well said. Thank you, honey. I was making a big mess of saying that. So yeah, this is kind of how fairy works. A big angelic, massive spirit is amazing and powerful, but it's no better than a spirit of a flower fairy that you might meet that kind of pulls your hair and makes you laugh at yourself. So when you see the fairies in your meditations and your journeys, and maybe see them in nature, they all have as much of a job and a purpose. There's no one that's bigger or more important, though you may in this meditation be going to the one that might make the most sense in guiding you, the fairy queens or the goddesses or whatever you want to call them. Before we go into the first little meditation, before it starts raining, has anybody had any experience with any particular fairy queens in the past in meditations, or just feel really drawn to them?
Queen Method has been guiding me.
Yeah?
The writing my book and everything.
And when did you start working with? Was that with Fiona when you sort of met Fiona? Yeah, she came into your life. Amazing. Was that something that you looked for? Or you just found that she came to you for? Yeah.
It's all been done on guidance, rather than any kind of plan of mine.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. That might be. It's like, I don't know where that alarm's going from. You may find that the fairy guide that comes to you, or the fairy queen that comes to you, is something you're completely expecting. You go, yeah, that makes total sense. Or it may be a complete revelation. There may also be, actually, I wanted to mention also, there may all be mermaids and undine spirits as well, like Melusine. If you've heard of Melusine, she's the snaky dragon lady. Again, in fairy tales, she ended up. She married this gentleman, this king or lord or whatever, and she said, this is great. She's like, oh my God, she's so beautiful. She's like, yeah, I'll do whatever you want. I'll give you children, blah, blah, blah. But on the full moon, you will leave me alone. You will not come and look for me. You will not spy on me. Fine. For a few years. And one day he was like, what is she up to? Maybe she's having an affair. What's going on? It's all too good to be true. And then he went and spied on her in the full moon and was horrified that she was some serpent creature writhing around. And then she obviously, he found out and she escaped, and she was this kind of wild dragon spirit. Again, maybe look at the deeper story of what you haven't been told, that this is kind of a dragon spirit of the land, a water goddess, rather than a spurned lover, which they all seem to end up as in the stories, these spurned lovers. I'm over that. So these are very powerful goddesses that the culture couldn't really contain, so they made them into other creatures. So you may feel your meditations, you're drawn to more water goddesses, more spirit, more nymphs, but we'll see. Is it okay to do a meditation with everybody? Is that all right? Lovely. I'll do a drum one before we go. Oh gosh, we've got rain. That's all right. We'll call the elements. We've called the elements. We've got water. So we'll just do a meditation now about meeting your fairy queen, a fairy queen. Feel free to do your thing.
While you're sitting down, getting a sore ass. You've got sore bums, you're all sitting still. So it's going to be difficult for you to be able to relax as much as you want to. So I'm really sorry if you're uncomfortable because you've been sitting still. If you want to stand up, stand up.
I'm quite comfy.
I'm
quite comfy.
Meditation is nothing to do with me. Whoosh there! Whoosh there! I will call my spirit guides, Great Father, Sky and Mother Earth. Be with us now, fairy queens, gods, goddesses, those who we love, those who have gone beyond and those that are with us now. To the earth and the power that draws up from the earth to the sky. I call upon them now to take you to wherever you wish to go. If you drum, you come down. When you play, we fly. We hope. Last couple of Saturdays ago I did this. I don't know. Let's hope we don't get the weather we got then.
Well, I'm going to be talking them through it as well, so if you want to...
Whatever it is you have to do.
Cool.
I'm there with you.
Okay. So, everyone can take some deep breaths and get really relaxed. Start to feel roots growing from the base of your spine, digging deep into the earth. On every out breath you take, the roots go deeper and deeper into the earth, connecting you with the life force and all that there is. As your roots go deeper, you're pulling up energy from the centre, the core of the earth, through the earth into your being. Every in-breath pulling up more energy from the earth. You feel the energy travelling up your body, through all the chakras of your body, weaving gold thread through your body, up the top of your head. And the energy reaches the top of your head, high into the sky. High into the stars, and you draw down silver star energy down the thread, down into your body, until it mingles in the heart chakra with the earth energy you've drawn up. Earth energy from below, star energy from above, all meeting in your heart center. In your mind's eye, see the room around you. See the place where you sit. And begin to see a white mist filling that vision. Until all you see is a white mist surrounding you. And as the mist begins to clear, You find yourself in a path by a wooded forest. It's twilight, fairy time. As you walk through the wooded forest, along the well-trodden path, you become aware of an old lady ahead of you on the path. She is hooded, and next to her she is holding the halter to a large brown and red cow. You go towards this old lady and her cow, and she smiles at you. She asks you what you are doing here, why you are here, and you will let her know that you've come to see the Fairy Queen. She lets you stroke the red fairy cow that's by her side, and with a twinkle of her eye, she says, "Follow me." You follow her down the path, and ahead of you is a big hollow hill, a large grassy fairy mound. There doesn't seem to be a doorway, but as the old lady approaches, she waves her hands and makes a symbol on the mound, and a beautifully carved ornate door appears. As the door opens, you hear sounds of revelling, partying, giggling, and fun inside this ancient fairy mound. Walk into the fairy mound and see what sights surround you, what fairy magic is taking place inside this ancient hollow hill. Once inside, you are lost in the senses. There is much food, drink, dancing, and laughing. So many different fairy creatures there. Tall, noble, shining folk, small sprites and imps. You wonder to yourself, how are you meant to find your fairy queen? The old lady gestures that you go towards a further door in the fairy mound. You walk through the door, and outside the door is forest, thick, magical fairy forest, a place out of time. It is a midsummer twilight in this land, and beautiful flowers and animals surround you. The old lady stands in front of you and casts off her hood and her cloak. Underneath the fairy glamour, she is the fairy queen who's been with you all along. What does she look like? Spend a few moments with the fairy queen you have found. Ask her any questions you would like. Get to know her. She has blessed you with permission to explore the fairy realm. She is the sovereign queen of this place. And you have her blessing to travel safely, to explore and to learn. As a beginning to your journey, you ask her how you can see the fairies. And she laughs and smiles and kisses you on your forehead. And the kiss of the Fairy Queen is the blessing of the sight. And when you open your eyes, you see that all around you, all along, there were fairies and spirits, gnomes, dryads and sprites. They've always been there, you just couldn't see them before. Spend one more moment with your Fairy Queen and ask her anything or offer anything you feel you might like to. Even though she bids you farewell now, she walks with you and you can call upon her and work with her whenever you wish. You leave the enchanted forest, go back inside the fairy mound, where now the partying has died down and the fairy revellers have gone. You walk through the door, out of the fairy mound. And as you look behind you, the doorway is gone and there's only grass covering an ancient hill. As you walk back towards the forest, the familiar mist fills the air until all you see is the mist. And when it clears again, you find yourself back here in the roundhouse, back in the field. Take as long as you need to, and then open your eyes.
Flutes got damp last night.
That's okay, it was beautiful until it...
They wouldn't respond, they got
No.
damp. The guy selling the ones along from me had the same problem
Oh,
today. He was
no.
trying to sell, so it won't have it, they've just got too damp in the rainstorm.
Oh, damp
Sorry,
flute.
they just,
No,
they change with the weather. I'm
that's
sorry.
all right, that's
They
okay.
usually,
No, it's lovely. And
it
it was still beautiful
no,
until
they
it
don't.
got...
You've
That's
had it, once
okay.
they've gone, they go. No, it won't play.
That's okay. Hello, puppy. You a fairy dog? You're gorgeous. Anyway, I mean, no one has to share, but if anyone wants to share their experience, I'd love to hear if they want to share. We don't have to. Did anyone not meet a fairy queen? That might be the easier one.
I got a sort of blonde with grey tints.
Oh,
She was
wow.
called Ursula. She appeared
Nice.
to be a bit Nordic.
Nordic, cool. Lovely. Is that something? Oh, that's
She was
interesting.
very wise and very centred.
Perfect. Thank you. That's great. Cool.
My old woman didn't change much when she took off her cloak.
She's like, ta-da!
Yeah, it was the same. It was the same woman. She just took off her cloak and it was the same woman. She didn't change at all.
Okay, fine.
Basically, she
That's
was
lovely. That's nice. The wise old lady is beautiful.
Still quite fat and plump and happy, merry looking and
Good.
a relative of mine.
Thank you. Any other? Guinevere. Wow. Yes.
Why? I I'm really excited. You've got the same.
Probably not strange if you're friends. The Guinevere pips up quite a lot, actually, because she turns up quite a lot, does Guinevere. Again, one of those ones that hasn't had the best tales written about her, but it's a very powerful star goddess and beautiful.
Mine had red hair, not dissimilar to yours.
Well,
She was older than you.
oh, cool. Did anyone get any names as well, or did it just Guinevere actually?
Mine called Evren,
Every, that's lovely. Cool.
and she said, "Welcome back."
Oh, right. It's like, you've been here before.
I guess.
Yeah. Did you get Mav again? Mav.
I did get Queen Mab, but
Yeah.
she's different to how I've ever seen her before.
Oh, right.
She's normally really mature and powerful and confident in herself kind of thing. But this time I met her, she was like, more like a maiden.
Oh, wow.
Proving that she can appear however she wants to.
Exactly.
She said, basically.
Yeah, yeah. That's another interesting thing. You may have got the same goddesses or same names or same people, and they may have turned out completely different to each person. But my explanation for this is it's timey-wimey, spacey-wacy. So, you know, yeah, it's a Doctor Who term. Timey-wimey, spacey-wacy, it's fine. That, you know, that they can turn up, it's not bound, they're not bound to the laws that we are, and they can turn up in multiple places in different ways. Maybe you're channeling an aspect of that energy. Like, I will channel an aspect of the Morrigan different to somebody else would, and that's perfect and wonderful and right for that. And like you sometimes have an older version of having a younger, I think it's right for that person at that time. So maybe you're looking for abundance and looking after, you know, that's that kind of, you get the wise old caring lady, or you've got the, ground, be centred, get on with things. I think they come in the form that's going to inspire you and give you the message that's most important to you. So that was lovely. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else want to share? No, not looking at you directly. I just thought I was leaving you out. Okay. Well, continuing your journey with your fairy queen, you may have got some advice or some guidance in the meditation. I know it's quite quick. I probably speak too quickly in meditations. But to continue that journey and that connection, it's really important to do that if you want to work with fairy in the other realms, the other worlds. There's different ways of doing that, and you can do this by going to sacred sites, going to sacred places, particularly ones that are relevant to the energy that you've maybe Scandinavia for you, or places that are linked to very Nordic energies, or maybe research the energy, research the goddess. If there's no information about it, don't worry, just meditate and ask the fairy queen what she has to teach you, what she would like you to do. You can make fairy altars in your sacred spaces, in your gardens, in your tiny balconies, like I've got the most small balcony in the world, but you can make little fairy sacred spaces, or bigger, more grander ones. And with the fairy etiquette, honour and respect, maybe do something that's going to be helpful. Maybe ask the fairy queen what she'd like you to do. Like maybe she'd like you to write a book. Maybe she would like you to plant a tree. Maybe she would like you to work with animals. There's always something that you can give in response that will enrich your life and also help the collective as well. Continuing on with the journey can be just asking them to be with you when you're going through times when you're meditating, or when you're going and asking for their help and listening and taking the guidance. But I always find that going to power places, going to sacred spaces, stone circles, beautiful wells is a perfect way to connect with the fairies and a perfect way to connect with them. But in your own home, make a little area where you can dedicate to the fae. Make a little space. I mean, we've got a tiny little flat, so we've only got a tiny area, but you can create your own magical area. Whereas maybe daily you just go and give your meditations, your thoughts, your wishes, or greet the fairies. I wanted to do, I know we're kind of a little bit running short on time. I know someone else is coming here, but would you like to do a bit of what I thought we could do, that's why I thought we could use the flutes as well, but I know the flutes have gone into the state of sogginess. This is completely optional, but I wanted to do a more shamanic journey, if anyone fancied that, where you go to I thought most people fancy a bit of drumming until they hear mine. Anyone's got a drum with them they want to bring in? You can feel free if you want to. So what I thought we could do is find a specific fairy helper in the underworld, the other world. So first I'll explain, I think instead of talking through the drumming, I'll explain, it's very simple, explain what we're going to do, and then I'll just drum and you can go on that journey in your own time. So Can you all think of a place in nature that you really love? A hollow tree, a cave, an opening in some kind, or a sacred tree? So in your mind's eye, think of a place that you go to, a tree, a cave. I have a hollow tree as my sort of place that you go to or that you know of. If you can't, just imagine one, but if you can think of one that you like, a place, a stone circle, a well, visualise that place. And then when the drumming starts, you're going to go to that place. You're going to, I mean, most of you probably know about Shamanic journey, so I don't want to teach you to suck eggs, but you're going to go down a spiral pathway. I'm going to keep it quite slow. I'm not going to go really mad with the drumming. We'll keep it quite slow. You'll go down a spiral pathway, and then you're going to go to a cavern under the earth. You may meet a guardian. Just be polite and ask to come in. If you meet a guardian who's saying, you know, what are you doing here? Just be polite and say, I've come to meet my fairy guides. I'm sure they'll let you in without a problem. And then you're going to ask to see a fairy guide. You may see many, many fairy guides. You may see power animals. You may see sacred animals to you that are on your journey around you. But spend a little bit of time in this lower world asking for a fairy guide to make themselves clear. It may not happen. It may just be a nice little journey and exploration. Imagine, you know, to go on this little trip. But you may find there's a fairy helper that really wants to come and help you. I'll do a call back after a little while, and that'll be a period of different drum beats, fast. Period of fast, short burst of drums, and then I'll do really, really fast drumming, which means you come back up the spiral pathway, up the tree, and come back. So if anyone's not comfortable and they want to stretch their legs around for a bit, do feel free. It's a pity that oh, never mind. I've got a synthetic drum, so I doesn't get upset by the rain, she says. Right. So if you want to have a little, just get yourselves really, really comfy. If you want to lie down, you can. I know it might be a bit, I don't know, just to get as comfy as you can. You're all right on your throne there. Okay, so I may sort of stand up for this so I can walk round. Oh. Okay, so does doggy like drumming? I love your doggy. Don't get distracted by a doggy, stay on target. Okay, so everyone, when you close your eyes and when the drumming starts, go to that place in nature, the tree, the hollow, the well, and when the drumming begins to get a little bit faster, start descending down until you kind of reach a cavern or you reach a space in the underworld, and keep the intent in your mind. If you ever get confused or stuck, keep the intent in your mind that you've come to meet a fairy guide, a fairy helper, and when you get there, just ask them to appear. Maybe chaotic, but it should be fun. Okay, so everyone get comfortables. take your time to open your eyes. I know there's another workshop going on now. I would love to hear your experiences. So if you want to chat later, or if you want to say anything later, I'd love to hear if anyone had any interesting experience. But I don't want to make the next workshop late. But thank you so much for sharing this with me. It's been lovely having you all here. I wish it could be longer. We could get quite into. But I hope you found some fairy guide or a fairy queen that was helping you, and yay for you. Especially